So what do we do now?
This is the Final Round Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now your host, Chris Marquardt.
Should be going
Good
live.
afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this edition of the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast. Excited to have you along for the ride with us this evening. Episode number 90 on deck. Jason is working remotely, so we're going to have him. Unfortunately, he doesn't have one of his cool backgrounds on quite yet, but he does have that cool launch picture of the space shuttle when he was down there in person. We'll get a chance to look at the newly cleaned office space with Jason, and we're going to welcome Josh Costa to the show, talk a little bit of drag racing action on motorcycles with Josh here. There's Jason over there hanging out. Jason, man, how are you?
I'm really well, Chris. How about yourself?
We're doing okay, getting by.
Yeah, same. It's been really busy. I know for me, I don't know how the schools are doing, but I know our school district is close to going back. Well, they actually sent a letter home and said that they're going to have all the kids go back either full time. I thought it was 4 days a week. And yeah, basically, if the kids are going to go virtual, so it looks like it's potentially getting back to normal here. And I will say business conditions wise, it's been really, really busy. And we got race car projects going on. I'm getting updates from Ben Height, new windows on the race car. I saw the headers all done last week. So yeah, it's been really super busy here. I'm sure probably the same with you as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been there's no shortage of things to do. So we, as you know, over the summer we had new siding, new soffits, new gutters, and stuff like that put on the house. And Sunday we heard a big crash. We started looking all over the upstairs trying to figure out what fell over. We thought something was stacked up funny in the kids' room, and there was nothing, and couldn't find anything. And I happened to peek out the window. There's a little bit of a shine through the window on the second floor happened to catch my attention, and the fascia board, new soffit, and new gutter had all fallen off the side of the house in the wind.
Oh no!
And landed on the metal roof on the first floor. It ruined the gutter and everything. So we called the contractor, and he said, "You better get a hold of homeowners." But with that fascia board off, it opened up the second floor to all the squirrels and stuff.
Oh boy!
So he came by and threw a new fascia board on, and we were good. But now homeowners insurance is talking about not covering it because there's no way for them to see the damage underneath that fascia board, so they can't tell exactly what caused it. And while I was up there, I figured now would be as good a time as any to take a look at we got that old chimney in the garage where a wood stove used to be, and I noticed a couple times now there's been some water dripping in. And when I went over to check that while I was up on the roof, the top of the chimney, the cinder block framework of it, you could take it apart by hand. The water had gotten in and cracked it, and it started to fall apart. So I took down that chimney and the clay sleeve and everything, and then realized that the steel roof on that part of the house was put over the top of shingles, which was over the top of flashing, and everything was layered up with the flashing on the ground up against the lower level, up against the rectangle of the chimney, and just thick roofing rubbered into place. So the patch on the wavy steel roof that I had cut wasn't going to work. So I just pushed all of the remaining flashing into the hole and took a couple pieces of, ironically, it was a couple pieces of old RC car body. And RC derby car sheet metal. And gooped up the edges and put it over the top and roofing taped it and sealed it the best I could. And good test today to find out that it still leaks just like it did.
Well, I would say this might be actually a blessing in disguise, right? Because this new stuff coming down might actually have at least alerted you to something else was going on there, right?
Yeah. I don't know. When I was trying to pull on it, it was moving pieces of the metal, and so there's obviously some moisture in some of the wood that was underneath there, and I'm afraid by breaking it apart, it has caused some of the blocks inside of the garage to crack as well. But they still seem to be structurally sound. So I'm not gonna. It's not like there's any heat going through it or anything. So that's where we were at. That was kind of exciting.
Well, I would say definitely more exciting than me. We're still putting ours back together. Siding and windows are done. Bathroom is almost done. I'm really looking forward to having it all done. The dust in the house is just killing me. I know I sound nasally normally, but I might sound a little more nasally. I've been stuffed up basically for the last 2 months. It seems like every morning I wake up and my nose is completely stuffed, and I'm just convinced it's because of drywall dust essentially being recycled through the house for the last 2 months. So really looking forward to the weather warming up and being able to open up some windows and go outside and yeah, not have construction people here. It's gonna be nice, hopefully.
How's our guest tonight, Josh Costa, waiting in the wings to talk a little bit about motorcycle drag racing. We appreciate you coming on the show a little bit. I got to see some live NHRA coverage on Sunday on Fox. That was kind of cool. They had the bikes were front and center there.
Yeah, I was watching.
I would say, is that what you would aspire to do, Josh? If you had, let's call it unlimited funds, would Pro Stock Motorcycle be what you would go try to do?
Pro Stock would be great, but they have a class that doesn't run NHRA called Pro Street.
Okay.
And they are basically street bikes, Hayabusas, GSXR 1000s. The motor combos are pretty much unlimited, so a lot of the bikes are turbo charged Hayabusas running on methanol, and they make about 700 horsepower, and they have no wheelie bars, and it's incredible. The record right now is actually from a GSXR 1000 turbo. He set the record last year at 6:38 at 232 miles an hour with no wheelie bars, and to me that would just be the ultimate.
That is crazy. I've often, so I have a motorcycle. I am, and I'm curious to hear kind of your background. I am a terrible motorcycle rider. I haven't crashed or anything like that, but I'm just not very comfortable or confident on the bike itself. But I've always looked at the motorcycle riders and racers, I guess I should say, and thought that they were absolutely crazy. And, you watch them on TV and, the Top Fuel bikes, Larry Spiderman McBride, and even the Pro Stock guys, you watch them race and, how they're leaning over and the front wheel's off the ground. And it just seems crazy to me. But that's what you would, if you had your choice, you would really like to go that fast on a motorcycle if you could.
Yes, I'd love to in a heartbeat. I don't know if I would run one of those Top Fuel bikes. Those things are insane. Those guys have to wear Kevlar vests, literally, because they're laying on the motor, and guys, they've had motors detonate, and they literally have to wear bulletproof vests, and those bikes weigh 1,000 pounds, I think. But pro street bike or a pro stock motorcycle, yes, in a heartbeat I would.
I didn't catch the gentleman's name, but he ran through 4 straight 200+ mile an hour passes in order.
Oh, yes. That was Matt Smith, who is Ricky Smith's son.
Did he end up winning this past weekend?
Yes, he did win.
Yeah, number 4.
Yeah, that always surprised me, honestly, that he got into racing pro stock motorcycle and wasn't, didn't get into pro stock like his dad did. But
he's talked about racing pro mod. I think he's, tested in pro mod, but he's just, I was actually surprised too. If I was in his shoes, I'd definitely love to get into a pro stock car or a pro mod, but
so
he doesn't know where he's at.
I guess, the first question I have is, so how did you get into drag racing to begin with? Were you just a motorcycle enthusiast essentially and said, hey, I'm going to go take my bike out to the track and see what happens?
Well, I've always been into drag racing. I've always been a fan. I remember going up to Leicester back when they had national events. And, I've been to NHRA events and always watch it, on TV since I was a kid. I had National Dragster subscriptions. And
oh, no kidding.
Yeah, but I was always, kind of a bike guy. I grew up riding dirt bikes and, just graduated to street bikes. And, then it just kind of, yeah, we just started at Empire, going up on Wednesday nights, just having fun, and it, kind of progressed from there.
Now, was your family all into motorcycles? So is this something that did anybody ever drag race at all? I mean, how did you end up even getting national dragster? I mean,
Well, my dad raced a little bit back. He was more of a street racer back in the 70s. Tons of stories about his GTO and, but my dad's always been a gearhead, always into cars and bikes, and, it was kind of just passed down to me, and I just, kind of graduated from bicycles to, RC car. I just liked having toys that go fast, and,
sure,
working on them and upgrading them, and, it just kind of progressed, but it always seemed to have two wheels on it, mostly for me.
I would say you mentioned RC cars. I'm sure Chris's ears perked up the instant that you said that.
Oh yeah, I used to love RC cars. I had a RC10 back in the day, and yeah, I used to love them.
Now, did you ever race any of those?
Yeah, I raced a little bit. They had a track behind Peter's Party Complex in Leicester, which is now a church.
Okay.
And I raced a little, but mostly just me and my friends, messing around in town.
I would say, that Dagnolo is like the king of all kings with regards to RC racing, right?
Pete?
Yes.
No, but I'm not surprised because it seems like anything that guy touches, he wins in. So it doesn't.
Yeah, he is definitely ultra talented. I've watched him. I watched him as a kid actually when he was racing RC cars, and it's just amazing because he has. And it didn't surprise me that he was really good at drag racing, just because watching him race RC cars, he just had a fantastic ability to concentrate. That it's really incredible, especially for as young as he was at the time. And but yeah, he was completely sponsored, and they'd fly him down to the Snowbirds in Florida every year, and basically he was the ringer. They'd fly him down there, and he'd compete, win, and get pictures with the trophy girls, and then fly back home. And yeah, it was pretty incredible.
So you're telling me that Pete's been winning probably longer than I've been alive then?
Yeah. I'd say my guess is Pete has probably more RC wins than I have total drag racing wins in my 30-year racing career. He's
something
pretty,
else.
He's pretty darn good. So I mean, you started, let's call it just fooling around a little bit with the bikes. When did it turn into, all right, now I'm gonna build a drag bike, or I'm gonna go out to the races every single year or every single week?
I started competing more on Wednesday nights. I started winning on Wednesday nights, and started coming to Saturdays, and I seem to do well at it. Like all my other buddies, we all started going kind of at the same time, but it just seemed like it came fairly easy to me, just as far as the basics. And once I started, winning rounds and winning races, that I've always been very competitive with whatever, and it just, it lit that fire, and I love it. I love to compete. I love, the pressure, and, it just graduates from there, and, how it goes from there. You just start spending more money and going to bigger races, but I love it, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have racing, really.
I think it was you actually that posted, I think it was on your timeline that you posted something along the lines of, yay, I got $1,400 in stimulus money coming, and then there's a picture of, big tough guy. He's like, oh no, he's like, my motorcycle has, $1,400 coming for it, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it goes. Certainly, you go through, and as you compete, you want to go a little bit faster, and try to, I guess in certain cases you probably think that you can make yourself even better than what you're doing. But I don't know I don't know with motorcycles. I mean, I don't know a heck of a lot about what's important to drag race a motorcycle to make a motorcycle consistent. I mean, certainly I would guess that, wheelie bars have got to make a huge difference, right?
Yeah, there's kind of two sides. You got two different basically groups when it comes to motorcycle racing. You have the bar bikes, and then you have the no bar bikes. And us no bar bikes, we kind of take that as a point of pride because being able to launch, leave the line on a bike that has anywhere from 200 to 300 horsepower with no wheelie bar, it's all about clutch control and your coordination with clutch and throttle, and it really is difficult to do it fast and do it consistent. And that's the biggest thing, as far as riding the bike. But I just, I love bracket racing too. I love the strategy. I've learned so much from John Pelican, is one of my best friends. He was my best man at my wedding, and he's taught me a lot about the strategy and the tactics behind. I mean, I love racing motorcycles, but I love bracket racing also. There's so much more to it than what people think. And I just love the games and the tactics and the strategy. It's just, I love it.
Now at Empire, and I have multiple questions here. I guess the first question that I have is, at Empire, can you compete with the cars?
Yeah, the bike class kind of petered out, so we run pro now. I can run in pro. I race pro a few weeks a year up there. I still love, racing against bikes and sleds. I go to Estelle a lot. They have a great bike program out there. We can have 30 bikes and sleds in a field. I go to Lancaster sometimes, but we've been traveling a lot more, going up and down the East Coast to bigger, just bike-related sanctioning bodies. And I was at Indy last year. This year I'll be at Norwalk for a race, and go to Maryland a lot.
Now, who's the big bike sanctioning body now? Was it AMDRA?
No, the XDA is the biggest one. That's run by Jason Miller, who he's done a lot of big races. He does like Import versus the World. That's like a big import race that they have at Maryland every year. He's down in Texas right now for that T2K or whatever they call it that they have every year. It's a big event down there in Houston. It's street racing and track racing. Him and his brother, have been promoting for years, and he's known as one of the best track prep guys in the country. But there's other series too. The one at Indy is run. The sanctioning body for that is called NHDRO, and they normally have more races out in the Midwest. But they're having a race at Norwalk this year, which I'm excited to run at that track. I've been there as a spectator, and man, I can't wait to run there because that track is just gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a beautiful facility. Now, when you go away to these races, is it typically just still bracket racing that you're doing, or do you fall into a particular class?
We have a bunch of different classes. They have your typical street ET and pro ET, which basically the only difference is pro ET. The guys can run delay boxes, but you could still enter without a delay box. Then you have, your pro street, which I was talking about earlier, which would be comparable to pro mod in cars. And then you have real street, which would be comparable to pro stock. And then they have a lot of index classes too. You have Crazy Eights, they call it, which is an 888 index on a pro tree. You have your super comp 890, and they have some slower index classes also that I normally don't run those because it's just too hard to slow the bike down that much.
Now your bike is pretty fast, right?
Yeah, my bike on 850s, 860s all day, and it's stock motor. It's been 830s, so it's kind of hard to slow down for like a 950 class without electronics. It's tough to kill that much.
That is with a stock
I don't run
motor?
a throttle stop, so.
And that's with a stock motor?
Yeah.
How the heck?
Yeah,
How the heck is that bike going so fast with a stock motor?
Well, I've done a lot of work to get the chassis right, and it's all about the chassis and the suspension, and shedding some weight and just getting the tune right. And I mean, when it ran 830s, that was at the end of the year in October air, which obviously makes a huge difference. But in the summer it'll run 850s, 860s, which is pretty good for, a stock motor bike.
That's incredible. I mean, I knew that there were fast bikes out there that could, run in the low tens, high nines as a stock motorcycle, and I figured, all right, yeah, if you have the perfect rider on it, all the rest of it. But I honestly didn't think that just with some, let's call it chassis adjustments and stuff like that, that you could get a bike to run that fast with a stock motor.
Oh, Jason, the new bikes now, the new 1000s that have come out, that they set the record for a stock motor bike at Maryland in September, I think it was. They put a kid on it. This kid was 16 years old and weighed like 100 pounds soaking wet. But they put him on this bike that was stock motor but was completely set up for the track. And he went 800 at 173 miles an hour. Stock motor, no nitrous. It had, race gas and whatnot, but I mean, it's just unbelievable. These bikes now, the new bikes, the 1000s, can make, easily over 220 horse after you get them set up and get them tuned right. And, it's insane how fast they've gone. I mean, to go 800 on a stock motor is just mind-boggling. I mean,
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, that is just absolutely incredible. I'm just really in shock sitting here listening to this. Like I said, I figured that, I was going to hear about, all the modifications that you made to the motor of your bike to be able to get it to run as quick as it does. And the fact that I'm sitting here listening and saying, no, it's just a stock bike. Are you running race gas at least?
In the summer, usually I run pump, but sometimes I will run MR12. When it got into the fall and I wanted to see how fast this thing could actually go, I ran MR12, which is VP 87 oxygenated, but it's $150 for 5 gallons. So I don't like to run that all year. Plus bracket racing, there's no need for it really, No,
I mean, I have to say, I completely agree. I mean, if you were to put race gas in your bike, how much quicker would it go?
Well, MR12 is probably worth 1,500, maybe 2/10.
So, I mean, that's a lot, but I mean, you're not talking about, so your bike goes 850s, you said?
Yeah, it'll go 850s. It's been 840s in the fall on pump gas, but like I said, in the summer, it can go 60s, 50s easily just on pump gas.
Yeah, so I mean, you're not talking about yes, I mean, from a drag racer's perspective, 2/10 is a lot, but you're not talking about a gigantic difference. You're talking about going from, let's call it running 850s to 870s, during the day and during the summer, and that's not significant in my mind. I mean, for 2/10 like that bracket racing, I definitely wouldn't pay the extra money to go 2/10 quicker to bracket race. No way.
No, yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
So so you are, it sounds like you are kind of I guess we'll call it a zealot, right? You're a zealot with regards to the no wheelie bar rule?
Yes, definitely.
Now, why is that?
It's just a point of pride, it takes, like I said, it's very difficult to, cut, have a 129/60 foot with a hand clutch on a bike that can easily stand straight up if you wanted to, and to do it consistently enough to be able to bracket race. It's a point of pride for a lot of people. It's like the old school, bar bikes are considered old school, so it's like the old school versus the new school.
So bar bikes are considered old school?
Yes, definitely.
Ah, interesting. Okay. So how do you, I mean, when you're leaving the line, and again, you had mentioned something earlier, and it brought up, like you said, a few questions for me. So when you're leaving the line, are you slipping the clutch completely by feel?
Yes. You set your RPM, and let me say right now, the past couple of years, I upgraded to what's called, we call them hand sliders. It's just basically the motorcycle version of a lockup clutch, which that takes a lot of the skill out of it. But that's what everyone is using these days when I go out of town at these big events. So if you show up with a hand clutch, it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. You know, I still love riding hand clutch bikes, but it's just, you know, there comes a point where your ego, you know, can be detrimental if you actually want to win against the top riders in the nation that all have these lockup clutches now.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. You know, there's multiple things that I can talk about from my own personal perspective. I mean, we ran a 5-speed, a manually shifted 5-speed when my dad was still alive, and tried to run super gas against guys with it all those years, and you know, with guys that were running trans brakes, and you know, that was difficult. For the longest time, you know, I refused to, you know, kind of conform and do what everybody else was doing from a throttle stop standpoint. But like I said, it gets to the point where, yes, I like being unique, and yes, the car was fun to drive the way it was, but
you like winning also.
I like winning too. There's no doubt about it. And yeah, so from that standpoint, I totally understand.
It's, you know, I hear it every year, you know, it's technology, you know, keeps it evolving, and the people that are willing to spend the most amount of money, it forces other guys to, you know, basically, that's why heads up racing now is so difficult, you know, obviously, because it's a big money game. And it's even like that now in bracket racing with the technology, you know, and it gets frustrating. But if you want to win, you know, you got to do it.
Well, that's why now it's kind of, well, I guess in this particular case, so if you were running wheelie bars, would you run, what was the name of the device, that the clutch device?
It's called a hand slider. It's still lever controlled, but when I leave the line, you throw the lever. You know, the clutch, it's a lockup clutch, so it has arms with weights on it, and you know, my clutch is set up with 2 stages, and the clutch does all the work once you leave the line. But the bar bikes, they use what's called a full slider. They have no clutch lever at all. It's 100% RPM driven, so they leave on a 2-step on a button, and when they let go of the button, it disengages the 2-step, and then the clutch does all the work just through RPM.
Okay, and that's I guess what I was going to ask, is that if you were running wheelie bars, would you still run the hand slider, or would you run a, let's call it a classic manual clutch? But in this case, you're running something even completely different from that.
Yes, they would run what we call a full slider, which is, you know, no clutch lever at all. It's similar to leaving, you know, in a car on a trans brake, you know, same type of thing.
Now, can you integrate a delay box into your setup?
Yep, you can. That's one of the things that, you know, I'm still kind of stubborn about, you know. Just, you know, I still have a little bit.
If you're new school, you shouldn't care about putting electronics on there. Come on.
But there's levels though, you know, and some places and some classes don't allow delay box. And at some point I'm going to have a second bike, and then I'll have more. I want to have a hand clutch bike that I can ride, and then, you know, an all-out bracket bike, which I'd probably put a delay box on it at that. But I still just love to ride the bike, you know. I would love to just be able to leave with a clutch and, you know, ride the bike. You know, when I'll ride my buddy's bike sometimes, you know, on Friday nights up there that don't have any of that, and it's so much fun because you have to actually ride the bike, and the bike wants to wheelie, and you have to shift it without a button. You know, it's just, it's fun. It's not the best way to race, but it's fun.
Well, yeah, and that I get a lot, and you know, that was, I don't know how old you are, Josh. I'm sure I'm older than you, but you know, when I was a kid, my dad was racing. I probably told this story multiple times on the show already, but I didn't understand why my dad was willing to go race the 5-speed and continue to go out to the track and let's call it, basically bring the knife to the gunfight. And it was because he loved the ride so much. And,
Yeah.
again, I mean, yes, it's fun to win, but, you talk about let's just say going out to Empire. I mean, it's not, we're not talking about competing at the U.S. Nationals. It's Empire on a Saturday afternoon. And all right, so you won. Yes, you're happy that particular weekend, but in the grand scheme of things, who really cares? And if you running your bike or your car or sled or whatever it might be, I mentioned sleds. I see Ron Dean's on here.
He's a great racer. He's an assassin. He's beat me like a drum for years. I beat him once in a while, but yeah, shout out to Ron. He's a great guy and an unbelievable racer.
Yeah, he is certainly, no doubt he is good. He's certainly a very humble and nice guy. We've had him on the show before. But, at the end of the day, whatever you're racing, I mean, if you're going to have more fun out at the track, racing your car, bike, sled, whatever it is, the way you want, rather than being something in more quote-unquote competitive, then by all means, that's what you should be doing.
Yeah. I mean, my bike, it's good. It's a good bike to bracket race. But to go take it on a Friday night to just make passes, it's not very fun, because it's, it has auto shift. I just throw the clutch lever and pin the throttle when I leave, and the bike does all the work the rest of the way down the track as long as I don't do anything to screw it up. It's great. It's a great platform to bracket race with, but it's not really fun to just go out there and make passes,
It sounds like a super gas car. You let go of the button and then you just hold the wheel straight, right?
Yep, that's about it.
So I guess so. Now this particular bike that you have now, and we haven't really talked about it. So what exactly is the bike itself?
It is a Suzuki Hayabusa, which is a 1340 cc, sport bike.
And you have, I know I'd seen some pictures earlier. So you have, I don't know what it's called, but you have extended the swing arm. Is that what it's called?
Yep, an extended swing arm.
So, and is that really mostly all you've done to the bike itself from a chassis standpoint?
No, I mean, it's got an aftermarket shock. It's custom, linkage, custom forks, a lot of lightweight stuff, lightweight bodywork, fairings. Just basically the motor and the frame is pretty much all that's left that's, hasn't been messed with.
So do you know what a stock Hayabusa or what your Hayabusa weighed when you first had it?
Yeah, they weigh about 650 pounds stock, and this weighs probably 420 pounds.
You've taken 200 pounds out of it?
Yeah, but let me first state that the stock exhaust on a Hayabusa weighs about 70 pounds. So if you get rid of that and throw on a titanium exhaust like I have, you're getting rid of a lot of weight right off the bat.
Yeah. I mean, that's certainly a lot. But you actually have a titanium exhaust on yours.
Yes.
Is that common?
Well, for drag racing, that's just one version, but the popular exhaust for, if you're going to race a street bike, we call them sidewinders. They don't have to be titanium. There's, several manufacturers that make them. And the difference is these exhausts come out the side and run down the side of the bike instead of underneath the oil pan. That way you can get the bike a lot lower, which obviously the lower you get the center of gravity, the better it leaves, the more consistent it is.
And so are the stock bikes, well, you're really you're making me feel really dumb here because I'm trying to think about my stock Yamaha V-Star Classic.
Yeah.
I would have said the exhaust comes out the side.
Well, if you look, they end up on the side, normally behind the oil pan, but when they come out of the front of the motor, the headers sweep underneath the the oil pan, and then you have the mid pipe that comes underneath the bike and then kind of moves over to the side, and then you have your slip on that comes up the side of the bike. But it's basically just to get the exhaust from underneath the motor. It goes on the side instead of underneath, so you get about 4 inches of more ground clearance to play with.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's pretty interesting. But so I'm surprised. I'm really shocked that you were able to reduce the weight that much. I mean, that's pretty darn significant, even with 70 pounds of it being exhaust. Is the rest body panels and directionals and crud like that?
Fairings, the subframe is custom aluminum, which is just basically the rear half of the frame. It's a separate part of the frame, and you take off a lot of stuff that you don't need, oil cooler, just a bunch of parts, and then it all adds up. And obviously once you get to my point where my bike is to take more weight off it, the price goes up just exponentially. I mean, aftermarket wheels, you can buy carbon fiber wheels, which are like $4,000. I mean, it just gets insane if you go past where I am.
I say that's where you got to have a sponsorship by your buddy John Pelican or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you think you'll, do you think you'd go to that point? I mean, do you think you would, build yourself I'm guessing if you're going to go to that point, I don't necessarily know you need to change the power plant, but you're probably going to build yourself a custom drag racing built chassis at that point, or doesn't it make a difference really?
No, for the sport bikes, it's really just the frame is the frame. You just build everything else from there. Now, when you're talking about bar bikes, they're different. I mean, the entire chassis, that would be like a pro mod compared to, just a big motor street car where the frame and everything is completely different.
So do you think you would ever get to the point where, well, I'm assuming that your bike at this point is a race only bike, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't ever take this thing out on the street, go get ice cream with it or anything like that?
No, I mean, I could, but the problem is they're so low to the ground that it makes it tough, because you can just bottom out so easily on the street. And
Yeah. That makes sense. So do you see yourself ever, I guess, taking a step up from here, if you will?
I mean, I'd love to. It's, it just depends. You know how racing is. It's all about, relationships and knowing the right people and having the right, people behind you and taking advantage of whatever opportunities may come your way and making your own opportunities at the same time.
Right.
We'll see what happens.
But now this bike came into existence basically because of a terrible mishap that you had. I was surprised you'd said this. We talked about it before the show, almost 6 years ago.
Yep.
Now that bike, what was that bike that you had?
That was a Kawasaki ZX14, which is basically just the Kawasaki version of the Hayabusa. The motors are very similar as far as displacement, weight, size. They're pretty similar.
Now, on that, was that bike just as fast as this bike is?
Yeah, it was pretty close. This bike's a little bit faster, but I've had this bike longer. And, I only had that bike I think I bought it in December and wrecked it in July. So I didn't have a lot of time to, do a lot to it before it ended up sliding down the track at 150 miles an hour.
I didn't realize you only had that bike for that short of a period of time. Talk about that past. Do you think it was possibly the accident was somewhat caused by inexperience of riding that particular bike?
No, I think it was more so inexperience with the situation. I made it to we were in the final, and the guy I was racing against was a guy who'd never been there before, as far as I know, and he was dialed in at, I want to say 1560, and I was dialed in at 860.
Wow.
So yes, and I never raced anyone that slow. At the stripe, I was 160 miles an hour, and he was, I think, 79 miles an hour. It was something like that, like a 90 miles an hour difference, speed difference at the stripe. So, and my best friend, one of my best friends, Matt Luke, raced him in the semis and lost to him. Same reason. He was, you just, he's, when you're sitting at the line for 7 seconds, even though had been racing for years and raced plenty of slow bikes, but it's just, he's past half track and you're still sitting waiting for the light and you're like, you're never going to catch him. And Matt warned me, he's like, just be careful. Don't just dial honest and don't get on the brakes because he's too slow. It's too dangerous. And, it was the final round and I really wasn't listening. I wanted to win. And that's what happened. I just was not prepared for the speed difference at the stripe. And I grabbed a little break. I saw I was going to have a little window right at the stripe. And I went to grab a little break like I always do. But it happened so fast. And I came up on him so fast. I just tried to react faster, I believe. And I just grabbed way too much break. And it was instant after that. I mean, I just wasn't prepared for the difference in speed, I guess.
Right. Yeah, and in this particular case, I mean, though I love quarter mile racing, yeah, I mean, it definitely, the whole situation was definitely exacerbated with the fact that we were still racing quarter mile at that point in time.
Yep, and it was at night, and I've talked to, several well-known racers since then that have, told me the same thing has happened to them, which made me feel a little bit better. But yeah, I just was not prepared for the situation. And, I should have kept in perspective. It's a Saturday night at Empire. It's not a national event at Indy, But like I said, it's just, I guess I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to say that after the fact, but once you're on the bike, strapped in the car, or whatever else it is, I mean, it's just a race, right? You don't necessarily, you're not thinking about what the venue is and the significance. Well, good racers, I will say, aren't thinking about the significance of this particular race or event or whatever it might be. So
no, you're just trying to, get to the finish line and do what you got to do and get the win. But
right. Now,
there's a lot of tracks that, classes that have, minimum or minimum dial-ins to try to prevent that sort of thing from happening. But, I was warned and I didn't listen before the final, so I don't blame anyone but myself.
Well, I mean, yeah, it happens for sure. So you grabbed too much brake and was it the front end that washed out on you? Is that what happened?
I don't know if I went over the handlebars or it washed out, and I remember seeing the wind light, and then I remember the split second I hit the ground. I don't remember that split second that I actually went down. I wish I could. All I know is I hit with my wrist first, and the first thing I can remember after the wind light is, being on the pavement and thinking, oh, damn, my bike. And then thinking, oh, I got bigger problems than my bike.
Yeah, I would say my understanding was that, and this is really unfortunate, that you slid underneath the guardrail and hit one of the vertical guardrail supports, right?
No, I did not. If I would have hit the guardrail, I probably would have been torn to pieces. I managed to stay on the track. They said I slid probably 350, 400 feet. Unfortunately, I didn't have the best gear on at the time, and I was wearing sneakers, which came off as soon as I hit the track. So I slid about basically 400 feet in bare feet, which, that didn't bode too well for my feet. And
yeah.
My wrists were just destroyed. I think that was the first thing that hit. I think I put my hands out, my arms out, and my wrist took the brunt of the impact. Yes, and it just literally destroyed both of my wrists. I had a bunch of road rash. I remember my wife tells me all the time when I woke up in the hospital the next morning. She says the first thing I asked her was if I still had all my toes, and she's like, "Yeah, kinda." Yeah, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty.
So how long? I mean, my recollection was the rehab from that was not insignificant.
No, yeah, it sucked. My wife was a blessing. If it wasn't for her taking care of me, I would have had to go to a permanent care facility for several months, like Murray Hill or something like that. But she had some nurse training, and she basically did everything. She was a trooper. She was there, every second. And well, yeah, it was rough. I was in the hospital for a month. I came home. I was bedridden for I think another month, and
You were in the hospital a
wheelchair.
month.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It was rough, and because I destroyed both of my wrists, I had no use of my hands, so I was completely dependent on my wife to do literally everything for me, and that was tough to swallow, as a man, but she was great.
Now, were the wrists the biggest issue?
My wrists, they're the biggest long-term issue for sure. I still have limited movement in my wrist, especially my right wrist doesn't move very well. You know, my toes hurt pretty much 24/7, but well, I get used to it, I guess. There's nothing you can do about it, I could whine and cry and be on disability for the rest of my life or get on with my life and, continue doing what I like to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's I didn't realize that you were in the hospital. I knew that, like I said, I knew that you had some pretty serious rehab, but I didn't realize that you were in the hospital for a month. I mean, being in the hospital a month, I mean, you got to be pretty banged up to spend that kind of time in the hospital.
Yeah. I had some serious road rash. I had to get a bunch of skin grafts. I think I ended up 12 surgeries by the time I was
Oh
done.
my God.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yikes.
was.
But through all that, you said, I can't wait to get on another bike.
I remember the next day in the hospital telling my mom, well, while I was in complete agony, that I was never riding a bike again. But you know how that goes. Within a few weeks, the pain dies down a little. And yeah, I was determined. By the time I got out of the hospital, I was already planning what I was going to do. And I, I didn't, the first pass I made on a bike after my wreck it would have been, I believe, 2 years after. My buddy actually let me ride his one night up there, and I I didn't think I was going to be nervous, and I wasn't nervous until I got into the burnout box, and I was actually very nervous. It took a couple years really to feel completely comfortable on a bike again.
I can certainly, I mean, after being through what you were through, I can certainly understand. And
Yeah.
I did this jokingly, and but I mean, I broke my wrist a million years ago falling off a horse, and the horse basically threw me off. And even though I told myself, all right, yeah, just tuck and roll, it's like still instinct took over, and yeah, I mean, I still stuck my hand out trying to stop myself, and it's not that I was really what I would consider to be terrified of getting on another horse, but at the same point in time, it's like, nah, I don't necessarily know that I need to do that again.
Yeah. I'm not terrified on a bike, but I definitely do not want to have to go through that again. I will say that 100%. But, it's like anything else. If you get in a car accident and you get hurt in a car, are you never going to drive a car again? And I'm not the type of guy that can just sit in the house and watch TV or, go see a movie and I need that rush. And, I'm a very competitive person. I need to feel that competition. And I really can't imagine doing anything else.
Yeah, yeah. I will say, Chris commented in the chat here, and he had to comment in the chat because I don't let him talk during the show.
Yeah.
My
Yes,
mic's
I haven't
actually
heard.
been muted for probably 40 minutes.
Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, but basically, he had said that he goes, it's really amazing that you're able to say, that's all, that's all it was, right? And yeah, I mean, it really is incredible to hear you tell the story like that. I get it. I mean, I can certainly. I mean, when you do this and you have a passion for it, you're not necessarily at some point in time you're going to get healthy enough that you're going to say, yeah, you know what, I want to go back to doing what I really enjoy doing, which is racing, right?
Yeah. And do you really want to let an incident defeat you? That's another, it's, kind of a point of pride also that, okay, that happened, but, we're going to move on and we're going to keep going and see what we can do and see what we can accomplish.
So after that, you built now this bike that you have now. Did you build this? Was this bike a completely stock bike when you bought it?
Yep, I bought it. I found a great deal on it. It was used, but it was showroom condition, only had 2,000 miles on it. And I went and picked it up, and it's never seen a mile on the street since. I brought it home and immediately started tearing it apart. And, I've had it this will be my 4th season with it. And, spend a little more money on it every year.
It's funny because I was actually going to ask if did you like slowly work your way up to where you are now, but it's like, oh no, I got it, completely tore it apart, make it into a drag bike, and right back to where I was again.
Well, I've been there, with the stock bikes. I learned on them, which I think is a great way to learn how to race, with the stock bike, because you have to learn clutch control and throttle control, because a stock wheelbase bike obviously can wheelie and go over backwards a lot easier. I think most bike racers should start with a stock bike, and I think a lot of them don't, and I think it hurts them, down the road. But I'm past that point now. I just, I'm on a drag bike.
Right. So now, I mean, you've gotten to the point where, I mean, you work with John Pelicane, right, full time, but at the same point in time, you also have your side hustle where you're working on bikes for other people as well. So yep. Was this something that you were doing prior to the accident as well?
No, that's just, it's kind of just come about, just basically from my success, and people see, my bikes, is well put together, and I've learned a lot, and it just kind of progressed from small little projects for people to building, setting bikes up. They'll bring them to me basically stock, and I'll set them up for the track.
So I was just going to ask, so what exactly is it that from a services standpoint will you do for people? I mean, is it, I saw pictures of a customer's bike that looked like it was up on a lift or something like that you had all tore apart, you were working
Yep.
on. Is it really setting up specifically for drag racing type of stuff, or is it, what exactly, well, I guess number one, what's the business's name? And number two, what exactly is it that you guys offer as a service?
My business is called JCR Racing, and I can do pretty much anything other than, I don't do internal motor work. That's pretty much beyond my capabilities. I don't have the tools,
Machine shop type stuff, right?
Yeah. Yep. But anything else, it doesn't, I do work on regular street bikes too. It could be anything from setting chassis stuff up to, wiring, pretty much anything.
So, I mean, yeah, if somebody wanted a custom, separate, different exhaust put on or something like that, those are the types of things you have the capability of doing on a motor, right?
Yep. Setting up, and then it gets, you can set up data loggers, fuel controllers, all sorts of wiring stuff. chassis stuff, custom body work, whatever,
I was
whatever they
just
want.
gonna say that's really where, let's call it, your that's where you shine, right? I mean, that's your real skill set, is let me work on the
Yeah.
chassis and tune this bike and get a bike ready, and particularly for drag racing applications, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
right?
If you want a bike set up for the track, I can definitely make it happen.
So we need to get some converts. I don't know that I do it with my V-Star Classic, but I have to say, half jokingly, maybe not even half jokingly, I have thought about, geez, I'd like to try it, but
You should. You bring it up on a Friday night while I'm there. I'm telling you, you'll enjoy it. Just have fun. You don't have to go down the track like a maniac. Just make some passes. I can give you some advice, and I'm sure you'd love it. I mean, you obviously like going fast and like racing.
Yeah, I'd say the first piece of advice you'd probably have was, could you not suck so much? Because like I started the show off with, I am really not. I don't consider myself a good motorcycle rider at all.
Yeah.
And I can totally see me leaving the line and doing the bike flipping over backwards and tossing it out in front of me, and being a YouTube meme for the rest of my life.
Well, I think I would just tell you, don't pin the throttle and throw the clutch when you leave the line, and you'll probably be all right on that bike. Just go down the track. Just straight line down the track as fast as you can without hurting yourself.
Right. Now, I guess one question I had was, you had mentioned, kind of, there are some places that have index racing and stuff like that. Is there any? I would guess you'd be able to, sort of throttle stop your bike to do index racing if you wanted to, right?
Some bikes run throttle stops. What we will normally do is adjust the shift points. Shift early, leave at a lot lower RPM. Basically during your time trials, or even up at Leicester, you kind of play around and see what it takes to slow down. And obviously you're gonna hold a little bit at the stripe to play some games. I enjoy index racing. I was at a race at Dragway 42, which is a beautiful facility, and
Agreed.
yes, and they had an 890 Pro Tree Index, and I made it to the semifinal against my buddy from Lancaster, actually. But yeah, I like index racing. I wish there was some more of it for bikes locally. I've watched you guys race Super Gas, for years, and I've listened to John and all the strategy that goes along with it, and yeah, I would definitely enjoy doing some more of that locally.
So I'm assuming that what you're doing is really equivalent to, as far as not being on an index on a pro tree, what you're doing is really equivalent to foot brake racing. I mean, you're trying time release of the clutch.
Yeah, it would be equivalent basically to pro on a Saturday.
Yeah. It's something I would have to say that I'm really interested in, just because of the fact that I know so little about it. I mean, you've probably heard the term, chain brain. I say,
Yeah.
please tell me you've heard that, right?
Yeah.
I know it's a derogatory term, but I mean, that's, growing up in a household that raced cars all our life, it's I don't know really any of the motorcycle racers, and if you said, all right, you need to go set up a motorcycle, I don't know anything about it. So from that standpoint, it's interesting to me, because it's sort of the learning experience, and I find it interesting.
I'm definitely going to send you some videos later on of some of the pro street bikes, and just so you can kind of get a glimpse of how nuts some of these guys are in the heads-up classes. I've done some heads-up racing, but it's so expensive. I won a big heads-up race at Empire, actually, when they had the no prep deal up there. They had a bike class when they had
they had a no prep bike class.
Yeah, well, when they had that big no prep race up at Empire and they had
Right.
street out, they had a bike class. It was heads up off of Instant Green, and I ended up winning that against a faster bike in the final. And that was probably, to me, the best win because I was up against a faster bike. It was heads up, and I knew I had to basically win it on the line. And there was a huge crowd and a bunch of people cheering, and I got it done, and that was an awesome night.
That's I would say that is pretty cool. I have to say I could definitely see that being a highlight of a racing career, if you will. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't know that no prep racing on a motorcycle is in my wheelhouse, but
yeah. Well, to give the track credit, even though it was technically a no prep event, there was a little prep work that was done when some of the promoters were taken out to lunch that day. That's all I'm going to. So the track was actually in pretty decent shape. But yeah, I definitely had to be cautious leaving the line. I shortened the wheelbase up a lot. That'll help it keep it from spinning. And yeah, I got it done. It was a good night.
Well, I say that's pretty darn cool. Well, I will say we've hit an hour. It always amazes me, but the time flies by.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, is there anything we didn't cover, or anybody you wanted to thank, or sponsors you want to give a shout out to before we let you go?
I'd like to thank Jerry and Clara. They've done a lot for Empire in the local drag racing scene, and we appreciate all the work that they've done considering the state of drag racing in general these days. I've known them my entire life, and they're great people, and couldn't imagine better people running that track now.
Yeah, agreed. And obviously, you've already thanked your wife. You got married last year?
2 years ago.
Oh, it was 2 years ago. Okay, I was gonna say I thought you still qualified as a newlywed, but not anymore. But yeah, obviously your wife's been a big part of your life, and
yeah, she's great.
You gotta have a wife that supports you from a racing standpoint if you want to be able to go racing. So
yeah, she's great. She likes going to the tracks, and yeah, I couldn't be where I am without her for sure.
Well, all right. Well, Josh, thank you very much for joining us. It was a pleasure talking to you. I really, we worked at it for a little while to try and get you on the show. I'm really glad that you were able to make some time out for us tonight. Yeah, and definitely hope to talk to you more this year. Definitely, keep in touch, and let's hear about how you're doing.
What's that?
I say let's definitely hear about how you're doing throughout the year.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I'll see you up there at Empire, bud.
All right, that sounds great.
See you guys.
See you now.
Thanks, Josh.
Yep.
And there goes Josh Costa. That is going to do it for this episode of the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast, episode number 90 in the books. It was a good one, Jason. A lot to digest there. I couldn't believe some of the injuries that came after that wreck, but I guess it shouldn't be too surprising. But thankfully, he can still. Thinking about the most tragic of outcomes that could have been. He's really lucky.
Oh, he's definitely super lucky. And like I said, I thought that I know that I heard from somebody that he had slid under the guardrail, and it's like, when you think about it, it's like, man, that would just be really, really catastrophic. And it's not that his injuries weren't severe; they were definitely severe. But yeah, he's lucky he wasn't killed. I mean, that's what it gets right down to.
Sliding that long, road rash it's not even on the radar of road rashes.
No. Yeah, that's. No. I'm hoping that I can go the rest of my life and say I never experienced that, aside from being a kid and falling off my bicycle. Right.
Right. That would be the best outcome there.
Right.
All right. Well, we'll do this again in a couple weeks here. Looking forward to seeing you all then. Hopefully, have a good week. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend. And racing season is coming up quick. Get all your cars ready. We look forward to having some more conversations with our favorite drag racers from the area. We look forward to it. We'll see everybody next time. This has been the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. We'll see you right back here again in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.